The morning sun filtered through the kitchen window as Kate stirred her coffee, watching the steam rise in delicate spirals. She had been awake since 4, unable to sleep with the weight of what she needed to say, pressing down on her chest like a stone. William would be down soon, humming that familiar tune he always did when he thought no one was listening. Their house on Maple Street had once felt like a sanctuary. Every corner held memories of laughter, whispered dreams, and quiet Sunday mornings spent reading the paper together. The yellow walls of the kitchen still bore the cheerful color they had chosen together 3 years ago, when everything seemed possible and their love felt unbreakable. Now those same walls seemed to mock her with their brightness. Kate heard William's footsteps on the stairs. That familiar heavy tread that used to make her heart skip with anticipation. Today it only made her stomach tighten with dread. She set down her mug with trembling hands and turned toward the doorway, preparing herself for what would likely be the most difficult conversation of their 8-year relationship. William appeared in the doorway, his dark hair still messy from sleep, wearing the old college t-shirt she had bought him for his birthday years ago. The sight of him looking so ordinary, so wonderfully familiar, nearly broke her resolve. He smiled at her, that easy, trusting smile that had first captured her heart in their sophomore literature class. "Morning, beautiful," he said, moving toward the coffee maker with the casual grace of someone completely comfortable in his surroundings. "You're up early. Couldn't sleep again?" Kate nodded, not trusting her voice yet. She had rehearsed this moment countless times over the past weeks, lying awake in their shared bed while he slept peacefully beside her, his breathing steady and content. Each time she had practiced the words, they had felt different in her mouth, sometimes bitter, sometimes achingly sad, but always necessary. William poured his coffee and leaned against the counter, studying her with growing concern. He knew her well enough to recognize the signs of her distress. The way she held her shoulders too straight, the careful distance she maintained even in their small kitchen, the shadows under her eyes that spoke of sleepless nights. "Kate, what's wrong?" His voice carried the gentle worry of someone who loved deeply and feared losing what mattered most. "You've been distant lately. I thought maybe it was work stress, but this feels different." She looked at him then, really looked at him, memorizing the way the morning light caught the gold flecks in his brown eyes, the small scar on his chin from a childhood accident he had told her about on their 3rd date. These were the details she would carry with her, the small intimacies that made up a life shared with another person. "We need to talk," she said finally, the words falling between them like stones into still water, creating ripples that would change everything. William set down his mug and she watched the transformation in his expression as understanding began to dawn. His easy smile faded, replaced by a careful blankness that she recognized as his way of preparing for bad news. He had worn the same expression when his father had been diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago. "Okay," he said simply, gesturing toward the small breakfast table where they had shared thousands of meals together. "Let's sit." They settled across from each other, the familiar ritual now feeling foreign and charged with unspoken tension. Kate folded her hands in her lap to stop them from shaking and tried to find the courage to begin dismantling the life they had built together. "I've been thinking a lot lately," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "About us. About where we're going, about what I want from life." William reached across the table, his fingers seeking hers, but she gently pulled her hands away. The hurt that flashed across his face was like a physical blow. But she knew that allowing him to touch her would only make this harder for both of them. "I love you," she continued, and the truth of those words hung in the air between them. "I need you to know that what I'm about to say doesn't change that fact. I have loved you since we were 20 years old, and part of me will always love you." The use of past tense was not lost on William. She watched him process her words, saw the moment when hope began to drain from his eyes like color leaching from fabric left too long in the sun. His hands, which had been reaching for hers, slowly withdrew to rest flat on the table. "But love isn't enough anymore, is it?" he said quietly, his voice steady despite the devastation Kate could see building behind his careful composure. Kate felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. She had cried enough over this decision during her solitary morning walks and late-night drives around their neighborhood. Today was not for tears. Today was for honesty, even when honesty felt like cruelty. "We've grown apart," she said, each word carefully chosen and weighted with months of consideration. "Not suddenly, not because of any single moment or fight or betrayal. It's been gradual, like a slow leak that you don't notice until one day you realize the tire is flat." William was quiet for a long moment, staring down at his hands. When he looked up, his eyes held a sadness that cut Kate to the core, but also a resignation that told her he had felt it too, the slow drift of their connection. "When did you know?" he asked. "When did you realize we were losing each other?" Kate thought back to the exact moment when clarity had struck her like lightning on a clear day. It had been 3 weeks ago during their regular Friday night dinner at their favorite restaurant. They had sat across from each other, eating in comfortable silence, and she had suddenly realized that they had nothing to say to each other anymore. The easy conversation that had once flowed between them like a river had dried up, leaving behind only the polite small talk of acquaintances. "Do you remember last month when we went to dinner at Romano's?" she asked. "We sat there for 2 hours, and the only thing we talked about was whether they had changed the recipe for the bread." William's smile was rueful and tinged with recognition. "I thought we were just having a quiet night." "We've been having quiet nights for months, William. When was the last time we talked about something that mattered? When did we last share a dream or argue about something we were passionate about, or even just laugh until our sides hurt?" The silence that followed her questions was answer enough. They both knew that their relationship had become a comfortable routine, a series of habits and shared spaces that no longer contained the spark of genuine connection. They were like actors who had been playing their roles for so long that they had forgotten what it felt like to be themselves. "I've been feeling like I'm sleepwalking through my own life," Kate continued, her voice growing stronger as she found her footing in this difficult conversation. "Going through the motions of being happy, of being in love, of planning a future that I'm not sure I actually want." William absorbed her words like blows, each one landing with the weight of truth he could not deny. She saw him thinking, remembering, perhaps cataloging their recent interactions and finding them as hollow as she had. "I thought we were happy," he said finally, but his voice lacked conviction. "I thought we were building something together." "We were building something," Kate agreed. "But somewhere along the way we stopped asking ourselves if it was something we actually wanted to live in." The afternoon stretched before them like an empty canvas, filled with the strange tension that comes when two people must navigate the space between love and letting go. William had called in sick to work after their morning conversation. Unable to imagine sitting through meetings and pretending normalcy when his world was quietly falling apart. Kate had done the same, knowing that this day would require all of their attention and emotional energy. They found themselves in the living room, sitting on opposite ends of the couch that had once been their favorite place to curl up together on Sunday afternoons. The physical distance between them seemed symbolic of everything Kate had tried to explain that morning. Even their body language spoke of careful separation, arms crossed, eyes focused on everything except each other. "I keep thinking there must be something we can do," William said, breaking the silence that had settled over them like dust. "Counseling, maybe. A vacation. Some way to find our way back to each other." Kate had anticipated this response. William was a problem solver by nature, an engineer who believed that every challenge had a solution if you could just find the right approach. She had loved this about him once, the way he tackled obstacles with determination and optimism. Now it felt like another gap between them, his inability to accept that some things simply couldn't be fixed. "I thought about that too," she admitted, pulling her knees up to her chest in a gesture that made her look younger and more vulnerable. "I spent weeks researching therapists, reading articles about relationships, trying to figure out if this was just a rough patch we needed to work through. And?" William's voice held a thread of hope, as if her research might have uncovered some secret formula for rekindling lost love. "And I realized that the problem isn't that we're fighting or that we have issues to work through. The problem is that we've simply become different people than we were when we fell in love. We've grown in directions that don't intersect anymore." She gestured around their living room, taking in the carefully coordinated furniture, the art they had chosen together, the photos documenting their shared history. "Look at this room. Everything in it represents a compromise. Neither of us loves it, but we both find it acceptable. That's what our whole relationship has become, William. A series of acceptable compromises." William followed her gaze, seeing their space with new eyes, the neutral beige walls that neither of them had really wanted, but both could live with. The coffee table that was too modern for his taste, but too traditional for hers. The bookshelf where their individual collections had been merged into something that looked cohesive, but felt like it belonged to strangers. "When did acceptable stop being enough?" he asked, and Kate could hear the genuine confusion in his voice. "I think it stopped being enough the day I realized I couldn't remember the last time I felt excited about coming home to you," she said softly. "Not because you'd done anything wrong, but because home had become just another obligation. Another place where I had to be the version of myself that fit with your version of yourself." The truth of her words settled over them both. William thought about his own recent experiences, the way he had started working later at the office, finding excuses to stop for groceries or run errands before coming home. He had told himself he was being productive, but now he wondered if he had been avoiding the same emptiness that Kate was describing. "I love the person you are," Kate continued, her voice growing more certain as she worked through thoughts she had been struggling to articulate for months. "But I don't love the person I am when I'm with you anymore. I've become someone smaller, someone who says yes when she means maybe, and maybe when she means no. Someone who has forgotten what she actually wants because she spent so long trying to want what works for us." William absorbed this, and Kate could see him processing not just her words, but his own experience of their relationship. She watched recognition dawn on his face as he perhaps remembered moments when he had swallowed his own preferences to keep the peace, times when he had chosen harmony over authenticity. "I've been doing it too," he said finally. "Haven't I? Shrinking myself to fit into the shape of us." Kate nodded, relief flooding through her at his understanding. This was the William she had fallen in love with, the one who could think deeply and honestly about difficult truths. "Remember when we first started dating and you used to paint on Sunday mornings? You had that little easel set up by the window in your apartment." "I haven't painted in 3 years," William said, and his voice carried surprise, as if he were just now realizing how long it had been. "I told myself I didn't have time anymore, but the truth is, I stopped because you always seemed restless when I was painting. Like you were waiting for me to be done so we could do something together. And I stopped writing in my journal," Kate added, "because you always asked what I was writing about. And I couldn't explain that sometimes I just needed to be alone with my thoughts. It felt easier to give it up than to keep having that conversation." They sat with this recognition, both of them beginning to understand the slow erosion that had brought them to this moment. It hadn't been dramatic or cruel. It had been the gradual wearing away of their individual selves in service of their coupledom, like stones smoothed by constant water until their original shapes were lost. "So this isn't about not loving each other," William said slowly, working through the implications. "It's about loving ourselves enough to admit when something isn't working, even when it's not anyone's fault." Kate felt a surge of gratitude for his understanding. This was why she had fallen in love with him. This ability to think beyond his initial emotional response and find the deeper truth of a situation. "Exactly. And I think if we're honest, we've both been feeling it, haven't we?" William considered this question seriously, and Kate could see him mentally reviewing their recent months together. The conversations that never quite went beyond surface level, the physical intimacy that had become routine rather than passionate, the future plans they made out of habit rather than genuine excitement. "Yes," he said finally, and the word carried the weight of admission. "I have been feeling something. Like I was living someone else's life, or like I was watching our relationship from the outside rather than being fully present in it." "When was the last time you felt truly excited about something we planned together?" Kate asked gently. William thought for a long moment. "I can't remember," he admitted. "Everything we do feels expected, comfortable but not joyful." "That's what I mean," Kate said. "We've become comfortable strangers. We know each other's schedules and preferences and habits, but we don't know each other's dreams anymore. Do you even know what I want to do with my life beyond our shared plans?" The question hung in the air between them, and Kate could see William struggling to answer it. They had talked about their future in terms of house payments and vacation destinations and retirement savings, but when had they last talked about their individual aspirations and passions? "I'm not sure I do," he said quietly, "and I'm not sure you know mine either." "I know you love your work with renewable energy projects," Kate offered, "but I don't know if that's still your passion or if it's just become your career. I don't know if you still dream about traveling to Iceland or if you've given up on learning to play guitar." William's expression grew thoughtful. "I did give up on the guitar, and I haven't thought about Iceland in years." "See? We've been living parallel lives that happen to share the same space, going through the motions of being a couple without actually connecting on any meaningful level." The afternoon light was beginning to fade, casting longer shadows across their living room. Kate noticed how the changing light altered the appearance of their carefully chosen decor, making everything look slightly foreign and temporary. It seemed fitting, this sense that their shared space was already beginning to feel like somewhere she used to live, rather than somewhere she belonged. "What happens now?" William asked, and Kate could hear the fear beneath his calm tone. Not just fear of losing her, but fear of the unknown future that stretched ahead of both of them. "Now we figure out how to do this with love and respect," Kate said, "because even though we're not right for each other anymore, we've shared 8 years of our lives. That has to count for something." Evening had settled over their house like a blanket, bringing with it the strange intimacy that comes with sharing difficult truths. They had spent the day talking in circles around their relationship, examining it from every angle like archaeologists studying ancient artifacts. Now, as darkness gathered outside their windows, they both understood that they had reached the end of their excavation. William had made dinner, a simple pasta dish that neither of them ate with much enthusiasm. The ritual of cooking and setting the table felt both familiar and foreign. Like performing a dance they both knew by heart, but could no longer remember why they had learned it. They ate mostly in silence, the weight of unspoken words filling the space between them. "I keep thinking about our first apartment," William said as he cleared their plates. "That tiny place above the bakery where we could hear every footstep from the people upstairs." Kate smiled, remembering. "We complained about the noise constantly, but we were so happy there." "We were different people then," William observed, not with sadness but with a kind of wonder, as if he were rediscovering something he had forgotten. We stayed up until 3 in the morning talking about everything and nothing. We made plans that were probably impossible and believed they would all come true. We were still becoming ourselves then, Kate said. Now we know who we are, and it turns out we're not the people we thought we'd become. She joined him at the sink, and for a moment they stood side by side, washing dishes, their movements coordinated by years of shared domestic routine. It struck Kate that this might be one of the last times they would perform this simple task together, and she found herself paying attention to details she usually overlooked. The way William always rinsed each dish twice, how he hummed unconsciously while he worked, the careful way he dried their good glasses to avoid water spots. "I'm going to miss this," she said suddenly. "Not the big things, but these small moments. The way you make coffee in the morning, how you always check the locks before bed, the sound of you reading aloud when you find something interesting in the newspaper." William paused in his dishwashing, his hands still in the soapy water. "I'm going to miss your terrible singing in the shower," he said with a small laugh. "And the way you organize your books by color instead of author, which drives me crazy, but somehow makes perfect sense for you." They finished the dishes in companionable silence, both of them acutely aware that they were participating in one of their last shared domestic moments. When the kitchen was clean, they gravitated back to the living room, but this time they sat closer together on the couch, no longer maintaining the careful distance of the morning. "I need to ask you something," William said, and Kate could hear the vulnerability in his voice. "Have you been thinking about this for a long time, or is this something recent?" Kate considered the question carefully. Honesty demanded that she trace her feelings back to their true beginning, not just the moment when she had finally acknowledged them. "I think I've been feeling it for about 6 months," she admitted, "but I kept telling myself it was just stress from work, or that we were going through a rough patch. I didn't want to believe that we had simply grown apart." "6 months," William repeated, and she could see him working backward through their shared timeline, probably wondering what signs he had missed. "I wish you had said something sooner." "Would it have changed anything?" Kate asked gently. "Really?" William thought about this seriously, and Kate appreciated that he didn't give her a quick answer meant to make her feel better. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe we could have had this conversation earlier when it might have hurt less. Or maybe I would have tried to convince you we could fix things, and that would have been worse for both of us." "I think trying to fix this would have been like trying to fix the weather," Kate said. "Sometimes change just is. It's not good or bad. It's just what happens when people grow." They lapsed into silence again, both lost in their own thoughts. Kate found herself studying William's profile, memorizing the familiar lines of his face. He was a good man, she realized, kind and honest and deserving of love, just not her love. Not anymore. "I want you to know something," she said, and he turned to look at her fully. "This isn't about you not being enough. You are enough, William. You're wonderful. This is about us not being right for each other anymore, and that's nobody's fault." William's eyes were bright with unshed tears, and Kate felt her own throat tighten with emotion. "I know," he said, "and I want you to know that I'm not angry with you. I'm sad, and I'm scared about what comes next. But I'm not angry. I think part of me has been feeling it too, and just not wanting to admit it." "What will you do?" Kate asked. "After?" "I don't know yet," William said honestly. "Maybe I'll travel. Maybe I'll take up painting again. Maybe I'll figure out who I am when I'm not half of us." "You'll be wonderful," Kate said with certainty. "You'll find someone who loves all your quirks, not just the ones that are convenient for them." "So will you," William replied. "You deserve someone who encourages you to write and dream and take up space in the world." The conversation was beginning to wind down naturally, like a song reaching its final notes. They both sensed that the important things had been said, that they had given their relationship the respectful ending it deserved. There would be practical matters to discuss later. Who would keep the apartment? How to divide their shared possessions, when and how to tell their friends and families. But those details seemed less important now than the emotional work they had accomplished together. "When?" William asked quietly, and Kate knew he was asking about the logistics of their separation. "Soon," she said. "I think we both know that prolonging this won't make it easier." "Will you stay in the city?" "For now. I've been thinking about moving, actually. Maybe somewhere I can be closer to the ocean. I've missed that since we moved here." William nodded. "I might stay in the apartment for a while if you're okay with that. At least until I figure out what I want to do next." "Of course. It's your home, too." The word home hung between them, carrying new weight and meaning. This place had been their shared sanctuary. But soon it would belong to only one of them, transformed by absence into something entirely different. As the evening deepened, they found themselves simply sitting together, not talking but not uncomfortably silent either. Kate rested her head against the back of the couch and closed her eyes, feeling a strange sense of peace settling over her. The hardest part was over. They had looked at their relationship honestly, acknowledged its end with love and respect, and begun the process of letting go. "Kate," William said softly, and she opened her eyes to find him looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Yes?" He seemed to be struggling with something, weighing words before speaking them. Finally, he said, "Thank you for being brave enough to say what we were both feeling." "I don't think I could have done it." Kate reached over and took his hand, squeezing it gently. "We did it together," she said. "That's what matters." They sat holding hands in the gathering darkness. Two people who had loved each other well and were now learning how to love each other enough to let go. Outside, the world continued its steady turning, indifferent to their private revolution. But inside their soon-to-be former shared space, Kate and William had accomplished something remarkable. They had ended their relationship with the same care and intention that had once brought them together. "It's over now," Kate whispered, and the words were not bitter or angry, but soft with acceptance and love. "It's over now, and that's okay." William squeezed her hand once more before releasing it. "It's okay," he agreed, and for the first time all day, they both believed it was true.